what is the best way to begin to investigate workplace culture?
Yeah, this is a cool one because we talk a lot about how you build a workplace culture, right? We talk about our hierarchy and we talk about the different elements to it, but how do you actually start to investigate that? So I'm going to talk about this one from a consultant perspective because these are the tools that we use when we're working with clients to investigate their workplace culture. But whether you are, maybe you're an external consultant like us doing these types of investigations or interested in doing these types of investigations, or you are working internally and you want to investigate your own workplace culture, the process is going to be largely the same. So the short answer to a long setup is that what we look for is first identifying what the pain point is with the client. So a great example is a recent conversation that I had with a prospective client, and we're going through and they're identifying all the problems as they see them. The challenge with pain points is just your pain is a symptom of something else. So we need to resolve that pain point, but we also need to, if we're actually ever going to fix something, we need to figure out what the root cause is. And the best way that we have for really starting that investigation and gathering the most rich data that's going to give us some really good intelligence about how the workplace culture actually operates is by looking at three different areas. We look at the policy, the practice, and the perception. So for instance, this particular company has some very ambitious growth goals. They've recently acquired another site and they are constructing another site, and they're actually looking at doubling their staffing requirements over the next year or so. And the big problem that they're having is that they have had really high employee turnover, especially on their new hires. So what we need to do is fix that problem for them. But the only way that we're going to actually resolve the pain is by actually looking at what's causing it. And that's what I want to talk about with this one is really the best thing that you can do is identify whether it's a policy, a practice, or a perception problem.
Yeah, and this is kind of something that is really important for different organizations to be aware of, and for different consultants and everything like that to be really thinking about, is that sometimes we see the pain point as not the symptom, but as the cause. Like people are just leaving, people don't want to stay, or we have the morale is just bad and we can't, and we have to fix that as a specific issue. But going at a lot of these issues head on tends to be you're really trying to address the wrong thing. I mean, that's actually kind of the whole philosophy behind why we call the podcast Diagnosing the Workplace, because you wanted to help identify that a lot of the major pain points that companies experience, that leadership experience, are often because we're trying to tackle the symptom instead of the actual cause. And kind of a fundamental breakdown of where a lot of, like, 99% of most of the problems that kind of come from the workplace tend to fall into those three categories. Is it a policy issue? Do not have rules to govern, or rules that will create stability and transparency around this? Is it about the practice? Are we actually doing things either in line with the policies, or how is this really playing out day to day, person to person? And the perspective, how do people see this? How do employees understand this? What is the general thoughts around this issue, and around how they understand and how this stuff it plays out? Because sometimes it's a matter of knowing, again, where the pain point is, but also what part of the policy, practice, and perspective is actually causing it.
Yeah. And this was a real aha moment when my conversation with this prospective client, because they had spent a lot of time making sure that their policies, they've got great policies. They have the framework of what they want to do. They've got very clearly written recruitment policies. They've got a process for their and pre-screening interview process, and then once a person is hired, there's an onboarding process. Like I I was honestly a little surprised at how much they had put together already, because unfortunately, a lot of small businesses that we work with don't have the frameworks in place, and we need to kind of set up a lot of these frameworks. But understanding how policy, practice, and perception really influence the workplace was a key moment for our conversation, because they had been focusing on one of them, and they were fairly confident that their managers understood the policies and were implementing them. But you can have the best policies in the world, and you can have managers who understand the intent of the policies and are doing their best to carry out those policies. But if the perception from employees is that the policies are not equitable, or they're not fair, or they're not sufficient, I mean, we talk about competitive, sufficient, and equitable all the time. If the perception is that the policies are faulty, or that there's a discrepancy in how the policies are implemented, unfortunately, it doesn't matter how good your policies are, because perception shapes reality. What we perceive to be real is what we respond to.